The little boy sat alone near gate 14 of the international terminal, his tiny legs swinging from the edge of a silver bench, his hands gripping a crumpled boarding pass. He couldn't have been older than 6. His dark hair stuck to his forehead, slightly damp with sweat, and his face had that look of quiet confusion that children wear when something feels wrong but they don't yet have the words to explain it. For over an hour, he hadn't spoken. Not to the gate agents. Not to the older woman who tried offering him a juice box. Not to the janitor who found him sitting there completely still, staring blankly at the departure screens like he understood what they meant. He had no luggage. No identification. No one near him. It was as if he had been dropped there from the sky, silent and still and entirely alone. When Officer Dana was called to the scene, she expected the usual: a lost parent, a stressed-out family separated in the chaos of boarding. It happened more often than people liked to believe. But something about this one felt different. The gate agents were nervous, too polite, too eager to pass the boy off to someone with a badge. Dana crouched beside the child and smiled. Her voice was soft, the way she used to speak to her niece before bedtime. "Hey there, sweetheart. What's your name?" The boy looked at her but didn't answer. His eyes were deep brown, almost black, and too calm for someone in his situation. He didn't look frightened. He looked resigned. Dana tried again, gently, carefully. "Do you know where your mommy is? Or your daddy?" Still, he said nothing. Just clutched the boarding pass tighter. When Dana tried to take it from his hand, he pulled it away with surprising strength. "Okay," she whispered. "We won't take it. It's yours." By 4:12 p.m., the airport launched a Level 2 child alert. Not a full lockdown yet, but close. Announcements rang out across terminals. Flyers and staff were questioned. Every child matching his age and description was cross-checked against flight manifests. Nothing matched. No child fitting his features was scheduled to board or arrive in the last 3 hours. He didn't exist on any passenger list. Dana brought him to the surveillance room, still silent, still clutching that useless paper. Her partner, Ken, was already scrubbing through the security footage. "This is him," he said, pointing to a time-stamped clip from earlier that afternoon. "Terminal B, Gate 14. Look." Dana leaned in. There, walking through the crowd, was a woman in a tan coat, holding the boy's hand. She was mid-30s, pretty in a tired sort of way, hair tied up in a messy bun. She looked distracted. Nervous, maybe. She glanced around several times as they approached the gate. Then, she knelt, kissed the boy's forehead, whispered something in his ear, and, without hesitation, stood up and walked away. Alone. Straight through the gate. Onto a plane. The boy just stood there. Watching. No tears. No shouting. He simply sat down on the bench and waited. Dana's stomach twisted. She just left him? "Looks like it," Ken muttered, but he didn't sound convinced. "Something feels off." Dana's eyes didn't leave the screen. Rewind. 2 minutes before she walked away. Ken tapped a few keys, and the footage rewound. This time, Dana saw it. A man. Standing near a vending machine, face partially hidden under a hoodie and sunglasses. He wasn't looking at the snacks. He was looking at the woman and the child. Watching every move. His lips moved, barely, like he was speaking into something. Then, seconds after the woman left, he pulled a walkie-talkie from his coat and said something into it. He didn't approach the boy. He didn't leave either. He just stood there. Watching. Dana leaned forward, her voice low. "Freeze it there. Zoom in on his face." The image sharpened slightly. Enough to see the man's jawline, the curve of his lips. He didn't look nervous. He looked like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Who the hell is he? Ken shrugged. Not staff. Not security. No ID badge. Probably not a passenger. They sat in silence for a moment, both of them staring at the screen. Then Dana rewound again and focused on the woman. Go back to the moment she bent down. Can we read her lips? Ken ran the footage through the lip-reading filter. It was rough, but 3 words came through clearly. You'll be safe. Dana's breath caught. What the hell is going on? Just then, the boy, now sitting silently behind them, got up. He walked to the monitor without being asked, looked straight at the image of himself on screen, then at the frozen face of the man near the vending machine. He raised one hand and pointed directly at the screen. Him, he said, his voice quiet but crystal clear. He was waiting. Dana turned to face him slowly. Waiting for what? The boy blinked once. Not me. Dana crouched beside him again, suddenly aware of the goosebumps on her arms. Then who? The boy looked her in the eyes and said, my mother. Ken stared. He spoke. Finally. But what does that mean? Dana felt the pieces of the puzzle shifting under her skin. A woman leaves her child behind and boards a plane. A man watches. Waits. Communicates with someone unseen. A child says the man wasn't waiting for him, but for his mother. This wasn't abandonment. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else. Something planned. Dana stood and reached for her radio. Get me access to all footage from the garage and the outer terminal perimeter. Track that man. I want to know where he went. And contact the airline. We need to speak with that woman. Immediately. But as she said the words, something strange happened. The screen flickered. Briefly. For just a second. And in that second, the feed switched to an angle that hadn't been logged, an unregistered camera, facing the boy from high above the terminal, like a hidden lens. Then it disappeared. Ken frowned. Where did that feed come from? Dana didn't answer. She was staring at the boy again. He was looking up, toward the corner of the room. Toward the very spot where the hidden camera must have been. And he was smiling. Not in fear. Not in joy. In recognition. He knew someone was watching. And they knew he was there. Dana swallowed the lump forming in her throat. Who are you, kid? The boy turned back toward the screen, his small fingers dragging along the image of the woman, his mother, just as she disappeared into the jetway. And then he said something that made Dana's blood run cold. She's not coming back. But he will. Who? Dana asked, whispering. The boy didn't answer. Instead, he sat back down, folding his arms across his chest, like he'd said too much already. Ken spoke first. This isn't just a lost child case, is it? Dana shook her head slowly. No. This is something else entirely. Behind them, the footage rolled silently. The boy on the screen waited. The man by the vending machine never moved. And somewhere, high above them, a camera they didn't install had captured it all. The woman in the tan coat sat silently in seat 14A, staring out the small oval window of Flight 393, her knuckles white as she gripped the strap of her handbag. Her face was pale, eyes unblinking, but behind that stillness was a storm. Her heart thudded loud enough she was sure the flight attendant could hear it, but no one seemed to notice. No one ever noticed, not when it mattered most. She didn't look back when the boarding doors closed. She didn't ask about her son. She didn't tell the airline staff she'd left a 6-year-old behind in the terminal. She didn't cry. She didn't panic because she couldn't afford to, not yet, not until the plane was in the air and it was too late to stop what she had done. 2 rows behind her a man coughed, the sound sharp, sudden, and for a terrifying moment she thought it was him, not the stranger coughing but the man from the vending machine, the one she knew was watching them earlier, the one who had followed her for weeks, who had sent the message that broke her last string of hope. "We see everything. Your son is safer if you cooperate." She had received it 4 days ago, no name, no number, just the message burned into her mind, and a blurry photo of her son sleeping in his bed that night. She hadn't slept at all, not after realizing the locks on her front door were tampered with, not after she heard footsteps on the fire escape at 3 a.m., not after she looked into her son's eyes the next morning and forced herself to smile. She had been running ever since, from city to city, then finally the airport, where she did what they told her to do: leave the boy, follow instructions, and do not turn around. But no one told her what would happen next. Now 30,000 feet in the air, trapped in a metal tube with strangers, she finally let herself breathe. She leaned her forehead against the cold window and closed her eyes, her hands still clutching the photo in her pocket, not of her son but of her. A woman she once trusted more than family, a woman who disappeared 10 years ago and then resurfaced in a photograph last week, standing behind her son in a park across the country. Alina. Her former best friend, her roommate from college, the godmother to her child, the woman who had vanished into thin air after a messy divorce and one explosive secret she never fully confessed. She remembered the last time she saw Alina, her voice shaking as she begged her to keep something hidden to protect her from someone who was watching them both, but that was before the fire, before the police ruled it accidental, before Alina's name was erased from every system and her number went dead. But if the photo was real, then Alina was alive and watching her son. And that meant this wasn't just about her anymore. The woman's name was Leah. She hadn't spoken it out loud in 3 days for fear it might be used against her, for fear someone on the plane might be listening, but it echoed now in her mind: Leah, 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 you left your son and you may never see him again. Suddenly the seatbelt sign dinged and the captain's voice came over the speaker: routine announcements, cruising altitude, expected landing time, turbulence warning. But then something odd, his voice paused, then said words not part of the script. Passenger in 14A, please check the seat pocket in front of you. Leah's head snapped up, her heart pounding. She reached slowly into the mesh pocket, pulling out the in-flight magazine, the emergency card, and finally a sealed envelope with her name printed in block letters on the front. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single sentence: "They know you lied." She stared at it, eyes wide, throat tight, and then without thinking she turned around, scanning the faces behind her, searching for someone watching her, someone too still, too focused, too calm, but everyone looked normal, tired, traveling, unaware. She sank back into her seat, the paper still in her hand, and she knew then this wasn't just about obedience anymore, this was a warning, and worse, someone on this plane was part of it. Back on the ground in the airport security office, Dana paced the room watching the boy as he silently colored in a page from a children's magazine they found in the lost and found. His silence was deliberate, like he knew more than he wanted to say, but she was patient. She'd seen this before, kids who had seen too much, who knew too much and didn't know who to trust. Ken stepped in, holding a printout, his expression grim. No match in any national missing children database, no passport, no recent school enrollments, no pediatric medical records under the physical description, no digital footprint at all. Dana took the paper and stared at it. "This isn't possible," she muttered. "Unless someone scrubbed everything," Ken said, "which would take resources we don't have. Or someone faked his entire identity from the beginning." The boy looked up suddenly and spoke, his voice soft but certain. "Her name's not Leah." Dana turned. "Whose name?" "My mom," he said quietly. "That's not her real name." Ken looked at Dana, eyebrows raised. "What is it then?" she asked slowly, sitting beside him. "What's her real name?" The boy hesitated, then whispered, "Mira." Dana's blood froze. Mira Halston. The name echoed like a ghost in her memory. She had seen it once years ago in a case file buried under false identities and sealed records, a woman who went missing after whistleblowing on a corporate crime syndicate involving illegal surveillance, data laundering and child experimentation, a case that mysteriously vanished from the federal docket just before the trial began. And the lead investigator on that case? Alina Merrick. A woman who disappeared in a fire, no body recovered, only ashes and speculation. Dana stood up. This wasn't a lost child case. This was something far darker and far older. She picked up the phone and called her old contact in federal investigations using the emergency line. "I need a trace on two names," she said fast, "Mira Halston and Alina Merrick." The voice on the other end paused, then said something Dana didn't expect. "Alina Merrick is not dead." Dana stared at the boy, who now looked her straight in the eye and said, "She came to see me last week, but she told me not to tell my mom." Dana's hand trembled slightly as she lowered the phone. "What did she say to you?" "She said the people coming weren't after me, they were after Mira, and if she didn't leave me at the airport they'd hurt her too." Dana leaned in, her voice low. "Why would they want your mom?" The boy tilted his head, then said something that made Dana feel like the air had been sucked from the room. "Because she knows how to stop them." "Stop who?" He didn't answer. Instead he looked back at the screen where the frozen image of the man near the vending machine still stared out in perfect stillness. And this time the boy said a name. "Gregor." Dana looked at Ken. That name, they knew that name from old files, from encrypted warnings and cold cases and threats buried by people too scared to speak. Gregor wasn't a man. He was a shadow. A whisper used to silence people who got too close. And if Mira had really found something, if she really knew how to stop him, then this child was more than abandoned. He was bait. And the woman on the plane was walking straight into a trap she didn't even see coming. Leah was shaking as the plane landed. The wheels screeched against the tarmac, her fists clenched around the envelope, her name still etched across the front, but it wasn't her real name, it never had been. She had stopped being Mira Halston the moment she escaped that building 9 years ago and gave up everything, including the truth, because no one would believe her, not back then, not even now, not with what she had seen, not with what she had done. As the plane taxied toward the gate, she glanced down the aisle, scanning faces again, searching for anything out of place, but everyone looked ordinary. The coughing man was gone, replaced by a young woman reading a magazine. A family of 4 argued over whose bag went where. A flight attendant smiled too brightly. No one looked dangerous, but she knew better. She knew danger rarely wore a mask, it wore normalcy like skin. Her phone buzzed the moment she turned it back on. No signal, no messages, no alerts, only a static screen that pulsed red for 1 second then went black again. Her stomach twisted. It was a sign. The network she had feared for years, the one she had betrayed, the one that called itself the program, had found her again, and if they found her, that meant they were closing in. As passengers disembarked, she moved fast. She had no luggage, only the bag on her shoulder and the burner phone she had disabled before boarding. She walked past the gates, past the crowd, past the smiling man holding a cardboard sign with someone else's name, and she didn't stop until she reached the women's restroom near the far end of the terminal, where cameras rarely worked and even airport staff didn't linger. She locked the stall door, pulled the lining from her bag and retrieved a flash drive no bigger than a fingernail. It was warm, like it had been alive in there. She stared at it for a moment, then whispered to herself a code she hadn't said out loud in years, a code that had once saved her life and almost cost her son his. Underneath her coat, sewn into the hem, was a slip of paper, laminated and creased and yellowing with time. She unfolded it, hands trembling slightly, and read the coordinates written in her own handwriting, coordinates that pointed to a cabin in the woods in upstate New York, where everything began and where, if she survived, it might all end. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Dana stared at the name Gregor printed in bold letters across a classified incident report from 7 years ago. She had never seen this version before. It had been scrubbed from all public access, flagged and locked under federal authority, but her contact had sent it through the back door with a single warning: watch your back. Gregor Stavros was not a person in the traditional sense. He was a network of identities, a man who died on paper 5 different times and kept resurfacing under different names, always tied to experimental tech companies, surveillance firms, military contracts, biotech labs. He didn't build systems, he dismantled them and reassembled them for power and profit and control, and Mira Halston had once been his lead data architect until she wasn't. She had uncovered something, a code, an anomaly in the system they claimed was predictive, but she insisted it was manipulative, something that didn't just analyze behavior but could be used to shape it, target it, even erase it. And she went to the feds with proof, or at least tried to, before the fire, before the files were lost, before Alina Merrick vanished and Mira disappeared with her infant son, never to be heard from again. Until now. Dana looked at the boy again, sitting cross-legged, now playing with a broken Rubik's Cube someone had left behind, his face calm, too calm for a child caught in something this big. He looked up suddenly and said softly, "If she opens the file they'll come." Dana approached him carefully. "What file?" "The one she took from them before we left the last time." "You mean this happened before?" The boy nodded slowly. "She said if she ever saw Alina again she'd have to finish what they started." Dana frowned. "What did they start?" He didn't answer directly. Instead he asked, "Have you ever heard of Project Arca?" Dana froze. That name she had heard once in a closed-door meeting involving national security breaches and a data leak that nearly crashed the East Coast power grid. No one had been arrested, no one had even been named, but the whispers were enough. "Is that what this is about?" she asked quietly. "Project Arca?" The boy looked at her with those deep black eyes and said, "It's not a project, it's a person." Back in the city, Mira didn't stop moving. She changed clothes in a hotel lobby bathroom, switched her phone SIM card and left the flash drive in a locker at a downtown bus terminal with a note attached to it written in a cipher only one other person would understand. She took another cab to a train station, then boarded a local train heading north, and didn't breathe easy until buildings became trees and the city dissolved behind her. She stared out the window, her reflection barely recognizable in the glass bags under her eyes, the fading bruise near her jaw, the way her mouth curled down even when she wasn't thinking about it. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried since the night they burned her lab and told her Alina was dead and that her son would be next if she ever spoke again. But Alina wasn't dead. And that changed everything. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the old photo again, this time flipping it over. On the back was a scribbled word, Dimos. Another ghost from her past, another branch of the same tree. Dimos Industries was the shell company that funded the original Arca trials. They claimed to be building AI to predict economic collapses, but behind the curtain they were testing something else: psychological triggers, memory suppressants, neural programming. She had helped design it, she had believed in it until she saw what it did to the children. Until she saw what it did to her. Because Mira hadn't always been alone. Her son had a twin. A daughter who didn't survive the first year. At least that's what they told her. But the files she found before escaping showed something else: test logs on infant neural rewiring, emotional detachment protocols, and a name redacted in every document except one. Arca H. She had always assumed it meant archive or architecture until she saw the birthdate, the same as her son's, the same as her daughter's. They didn't just take her data. They took her child. And now someone had brought Alina back into play to either finish the work or bury it forever. At the small cabin, Mira stepped through the dust and silence and into a space frozen in time: broken glass, a half-burnt notebook, old coffee cups, a wall covered in maps and red string and newspaper clippings. She hadn't been back here in years, not since she realized the extent of the betrayal and ran without looking back. But now she needed to know. She moved to the wall and peeled back a loose panel, revealing a safe, the keypad still smudged with the last code she used. Her fingers flew across the numbers and the door clicked open, revealing a black binder thicker than a Bible with one word written across the front. Heritage. Inside were files she thought destroyed, copies of surveillance footage, logs of interviews, emails between Dimos executives and military advisors, including one signed by Gregor Stavros himself, and a photo clipped to the back cover of a girl with her son's face but longer hair, sad eyes, and a date stamp from only 3 months ago. She gasped. She dropped the binder. She stumbled back, hitting the wall and collapsing to the floor, because in that moment she understood the truth. Her daughter wasn't dead. She was alive. And they had used her. Modified her. Programmed her. And named her after the very project that made her. Arca H. Her daughter was Arca. And she was out there. Right now. Not just watching. Waiting. The knock came at exactly 3:23 in the morning, a pattern too precise to be random. One knock, pause, 2 quick raps, then silence. Mira didn't move at first, her breath caught in her chest, every instinct screaming not to open that door. The wind outside howled through the trees, but nothing else stirred, no footsteps, no movement, only the echo of that knock hanging in the silence like a warning. She stepped lightly across the wooden floor, avoiding the creaking boards, and leaned toward the peephole. There was no one there, nothing but darkness and the edge of a pine branch swaying slowly in the breeze, but her gut told her someone was waiting, someone who knew this cabin, someone who knew her. She turned from the door, walked back toward the table where the binder still lay open to the photograph, the girl with her son's face staring out from beneath a timestamp that proved everything she feared. The girl wasn't just alive, she had been placed, raised, programmed somewhere close enough to be tracked and far enough to be hidden. Then the knock came again, only this time from behind her, not at the door but at the window 3 feet away across the cabin, and when she spun around a shape darted past, barely visible, fast but real, and suddenly the silence wasn't silence anymore, it was heavy with breath and motion and history pressing against the walls. She grabbed the poker from the fireplace, heart pounding, and yanked the door open, stepping out into the cold and the dark, ready to fight, ready to scream, ready to run, and she froze. Because standing there in the snow, lit only by moonlight, was Alina. Her hair shorter now, her face harder, eyes shadowed with things Mira couldn't begin to name. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just looked at Mira with the weight of 10 lost years behind her, and then said quietly, "You shouldn't have opened the binder." Mira's grip tightened on the poker. "I should have opened it the day you left me to burn." Alina didn't flinch. "I didn't leave you, I was taken just like your daughter." Mira's breath caught in her throat. "You knew she was alive." "I suspected," Alina said, "but I couldn't reach you, not until now, not until they let me go." "Let you go?" Mira spat. "Or sent you back?" Alina stepped forward slowly, her hands raised in surrender, her voice low but sharp. "I broke out 3 months ago. They think I'm dead. I've been tracking Arca since then, but you're not ready for what she's become." Mira's voice trembled. "She's my daughter." "No," Alina said, "she's their weapon." Inside the cabin, Alina laid out her files, photos, video, surveillance footage from labs. Mira had never seen guards escorting a teenage girl with dark hair, pale skin, blank eyes, the kind of blank that wasn't natural, the kind of blank that came from years of training and isolation and programming. "They made her watch things," Alina said, "made her listen to screams. They called it emotional resistance training. They made her forget what it means to love or cry or trust." Mira shook her head no, over and over, trying to reject the images, trying to find something familiar in the face on the screen, but it wasn't her daughter anymore, it was a shadow wearing her skin. "She's not lost," Alina said gently, "but she's not free either." "Why now?" Mira whispered. "Why bring this to me after all these years?" "Because she's looking for you." Mira looked up. "What?" Alina nodded. "She escaped 3 days ago. That's why they're panicking, that's why they're coming after you, because if she finds you before they do, she might remember who she really is." "And what happens then?" Alina hesitated. "Then the whole thing collapses." In the airport, Dana sat with the boy, now asleep, in the office couch, a half-eaten sandwich untouched. Beside him the television played silent footage of a fire at a data storage facility downtown. No injuries reported, but the name of the company scrolled across the screen in bold white letters. Dymas Industries. She stood up, heart sinking. That wasn't a coincidence, not when Mira had just resurfaced, not when Alina Merrick had just been confirmed alive, not when a program like Arca might be loose in the wild and connected to both of them. Ken returned with a file thick and classified. "You're going to want to see this," he said, dropping it on the desk. Project Arca wasn't just one girl. Dana opened the folder, photos of children, profiles, redacted birth dates, locations, programs, conditioning results, all stamped with terms like successful, incomplete, terminated. "How many?" Ken looked grim. "At least 18 confirmed, only one with survival stats above 90%. Arca H." He pointed to the last page where the photo matched the one Mira had carried of the girl in the park. But here she was older, stronger, eyes sharper, cold, intelligent, terrifying, and the note beside her read: "Behavioral drift predicted, monitor closely, possible defection." Dana closed the file slowly. "She's not running away, she's hunting." In the cabin, Mira stared at a small device Alina pulled from her coat, shaped like a coin, thin and metallic. It pulsed gently with a blue light. "What is it?" "A neural beacon." "For who?" "For her." "You brought her here." Mira's voice cracked with fury. No, Alina said, I brought you here so you'd have a choice. She's coming whether we want her to or not, but if she sees you first, if you speak to her, there's a chance we can reach her before they do. And if I can't, then she'll kill us both. Outside the wind picked up again, but this time it wasn't natural. It was stirred by the blades of something overhead, a drone sweeping through the trees scanning infrared audio proximity sensors. Mira and Alina ducked low behind the fireplace wall, Myra's hand shaking around the poker again. They found us. No, Alina said, not them. Then who? Alina reached for the beacon and smashed it on the ground, shattering the light and sending up a pulse of static that echoed like a scream, and in that silence Mira heard the sound of feet crunching snow outside, not running, not stumbling, but walking steady, deliberate, each step closer than the last. She's here. The girl stepped into the doorway without knocking, her hair tied back, her posture military, her expression unreadable, eyes fixed straight ahead at Mira, and for a moment no one moved. Then she spoke. Mother. Mira couldn't breathe. The word hit her like a bullet, sharp, final, real. Alina stood slowly between them, arms half raised, voice low. We're not here to hurt you, Arka. That's not my name. Then what is? The girl looked at Mira. Tell me. Mira took a step forward, hands trembling, eyes wide with grief. Your name is Ava. The girl blinked slowly. That name is dead. No, Mira said, voice rising, heart splitting. It's yours. It's land behind a tree, one hand on the ground, the other pulling a small silver device from her belt. It flashed red and the ground under the agents pulsed once and then again, and suddenly 3 of them collapsed. Alina shoved Mira back into the cabin, yelling, stay down, but Mira could not take her eyes off Ava, who stood now in the clearing surrounded by snow and sparks, her face expressionless, her hands raised but not in surrender, in invitation. She was daring them to come closer, and they did. The next moments happened fast, too fast to track. Mira heard the crack of bones, the snap of a branch, the hiss of something chemical in the air. She could not see clearly, but she felt it in her chest, the vibration, the echo of violence, and behind it the steady rhythm of Ava's breathing in and out like she was counting down to something. Then silence again. Alina peeked through the shattered window, then ducked back, eyes wide. She took out 5 of them in less than 30 seconds. Mira whispered, she's just a girl. Alina said, she's not just anything, not anymore. Ava stepped through the front door, her boots wet with snow, her jacket torn, her shoulder bleeding, but she walked like she didn't feel pain. She looked at Mira and said clearly, you have 5 minutes before more arrive. Mira stepped forward slowly, 1 foot at a time, as if the floor might give way beneath her. She reached out a hand and touched Ava's cheek, and the girl didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even blink. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Mira whispered. Because I didn't remember. And now? Now I do. What do you remember? Ava's voice was soft, almost detached. I remember the white room, the needles, the voices through the walls, the songs they used to test my response time, the man who said I had a gift, and the woman who said I wasn't real, and the other children who disappeared one by one. And me. A pause. I remembered your face 3 days ago. It came back like a movie, like a dream, like fire. Alina moved behind them, collecting the files, shoving them into a duffel bag as fast as she could. We need to go, she said, they're rerouting satellite eyes, they'll find us in minutes. Where? Mira said. There's a decommissioned substation 30 miles north, she said, underground, shielded. They used it to run power tests. It's not in the grid anymore, but I've stashed gear there and we can hide at least long enough to plan. Mira turned to Ava. Will you come with us? Ava looked at the door behind her, at the snow soaked in blood, at the bodies she had left behind, then back at Mira, and nodded once. I'll follow you. They moved fast. Alina drove while Ava and Mira sat in the back, Ava's hands wrapped in gauze, Myra's eyes never leaving her daughter, not for a second, part of her still afraid that if she blinked the girl would vanish again, like smoke, like memory, like loss. Ava said nothing for almost an hour, but then she spoke so suddenly Mira jumped. They told me my mother was dangerous. Who told you? The instructors, the handlers, the voice in the walls. They said if I ever saw you I should end the memory immediately. And you didn't. I wanted to know if you were real. What do you think now? Ava looked at her. I think they lied. The substation was buried under ice and overgrowth, rusted metal and broken chain fences. They climbed down a narrow stairwell lit only by the red glow of Alina's beacon device. The air smelled of dust and cold and something older. Inside were crates, batteries, canned food, weapons, a terminal running off backup power. Alina activated it and the screen flickered alive, displaying encrypted logs and surveillance feeds. Mira watched Ava walk to the far corner of the room and sit cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. She does that, Alina said, when she's processing. She's not a machine. No, Alina said, but they tried to make her one. Mira turned to the screen. What's this? The last log I pulled from the Deimos mainframe before it burned. You torched it. Had to. What's on it? Proof. Of what? That Ava wasn't the only one who escaped. Mira's breath caught. There are more. 2, at least one in Europe, one unaccounted for, both part of the Arca line, both unstable, both hunting something they called the seed code. What's that? A neural trigger, a memory lock that resets the original programming and gives them a choice: freedom or extinction. Which one did Ava choose? Alina didn't answer right away. She hasn't heard it yet. What happens if she does? We won't know until she decides. Mira turned toward her daughter, who now sat silently, eyes still closed, as if listening to something far away or buried deep inside, and she walked to her, slowly knelt beside her and whispered, "I love you." Ava opened her eyes and for a split second something shifted in them, a flicker of light or warmth or something that looked like pain, and Mira reached out, took her hand and said again, "I love you, Ava, I always have, I never stopped, I never will." And Ava closed her fingers around her mother's hand, not tightly, not fully, but enough. Then the terminal screen went black. Alina cursed, pulled out her second terminal and powered it up. The screen came on and displayed a message in red. "They are already inside." Alina's hand moved to her sidearm. "We've been found." "How?" Ava stood up slowly, her posture changing, her body language reverting. Mira recognized it too late, the straight spine, the clenched fists, the focus in her eyes. "They used me to track you," Ava said. "They let me remember just enough. They wanted me to find you." "Why?" "Because you have the seed code." "I don't." "Not in your files, not in your mind." "Where then?" "In your blood." Mira staggered back. "What are you saying?" "You gave birth to the code, they embedded it in your DNA and then into me through you. I'm the vessel." "No," Mira whispered. "No, they couldn't." "They did. And now they're coming to take it back." Alina pointed to the wall. "Emergency exit, go now, I'll hold them." "You won't survive." "Neither will you if you stay now, go." Mira grabbed Ava's hand again, but the girl didn't move. "I can end this," Ava said softly. "What?" "If I activate the code, it will destroy the network, every node, every server, every backup. They linked me to all of it through my own body." "But it could kill you." "Yes." Mira shook her head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Ava said, "and this is my choice." Mira sobbed, now the tears she had held back for 10 years finally breaking. "You don't have to do this." "I do, because if I don't they'll come for everyone and they won't stop, not until the world is theirs." She pulled a device from her jacket, small and silver and blinking red. "This was the final trigger. They gave it to me in case I failed. Now I'll use it against them." Mira tried to speak, but no words came, only silence, only heartbreak, only her arms wrapping around her daughter and holding her tighter than ever before. Ava looked at her one last time. "Tell him I'm sorry." Then she pressed the trigger. And everything went white. The world was gone for a moment, or maybe longer. The light had no edge, no sound, no heat, only silence. And then Mira woke with snow in her hair, ash on her lips, and the smell of ozone burning through the cold. The forest was still, the cabin gone, the substation nothing but rubble and twisted metal, the air humming with the memory of something that had passed. She opened her eyes fully and sat up, her limbs stiff, her head heavy, and beside her lay Alina, bloodied but breathing, eyes open and staring at the sky. "She did it," Alina whispered. "Where is she?" Mira asked, voice hoarse, throat raw. "Gone," Alina said, "and this time for good." Mira crawled forward, desperate, searching, calling Ava's name again and again, like it might pull her back, like love might be louder than destruction, but there was no answer, only the silence of something finished. Then something moved in the snow. She turned, saw a scrap of fabric, Ava's jacket, half burned, half buried, and beside it the silver trigger cracked open with the core exposed. Mira picked it up and felt warmth, not from heat but from memory, from something deeper than science, something older than programming, a final imprint left behind. A voice echoed inside her head, faint, low, Ava's voice, not mechanical, not cold, just soft and real. "I remembered you when it mattered." And that was all. 6 months passed. The world did not change overnight, but something had shifted. Dimos Industries collapsed, their network shattered, executives vanished or arrested, entire facilities abandoned and scrubbed clean by someone no one could trace. Dana and Ken led the official inquiry, but most of what they found never reached the press because too much of it was unbelievable. Mira moved far away to a coast where the wind was gentler and the sun came through fog, and she taught herself to live again. She bought a camera, took photos of children playing, of mothers hugging their kids, of faces filled with life, and she printed every one and taped them to her wall. Every week a letter came unsigned with no return address, just a single photograph. Sometimes a forest, sometimes a city street, sometimes a child running in the distance. Mira kept them all, and in each one, somewhere barely visible, was the faint outline of a girl watching from the shadows. They told her Ava had died that day, but Mira no longer believed what people told her. Mira believed in what she felt, and what she felt every time she looked at those photos was not grief but fire, not loss but survival. One day she opened a package that came with no stamp and no note, only a flash drive inside. She plugged it into her old laptop and the screen lit up with a video: Ava sitting on a bench in a park wearing a hood, smiling slightly and speaking softly. "If you're seeing this, then I'm alive and I'm free. I don't know how long that will last or who I'll become next, but I wanted you to know that I chose it. I chose to burn it all down so no one else would have to grow up in a box, in a test, in a lie, and I chose to live not as a weapon but as your daughter." Mira watched the video 100 times, every line, every pause memorized until it became part of her breathing. She no longer cried when she saw Ava's face. Now she smiled because she knew love had not died in that white room. It had survived, it had waited, it had found its way back. Years later a book appeared in independent shops, bound in gray with no author listed, titled The Memory of Fire, and on the first page a single line: "Sometimes to destroy what controls you, you have to burn the version of yourself they built." And Mira knew then without doubt that Ava was still out there somewhere, writing her story one page at a time, in shadows and in light. And she whispered once more into the quiet, "I will always be your mother." And somewhere beyond the sea a girl smiled. The end.